I came in with the expectation that this is what's going to happen. Like, for me, this isn't like a party. Like, yeah, it's great. I feel like it's a great accomplishment, but like, there's so much more left to be done. Like, yeah, we made the playoffs. There's 6 regular season games. I mean, I'm not just happy to be in the playoffs. I think we have the type of team that can win and advance.
Despite all the splashy three-pointers and visionary passes she routinely makes, Caitlin Clark will ultimately be judged on one factor only: winning. She is getting much better at that lately, leading the Fever on a spirited run to correct the early season woes and qualify for the playoffs for the first time since 2016. After starting the season just 1-8, the Indiana Fever have gone 18-12 to clinch a spot in the postseason, and improved play from their young star was the primary reason. The team is clicking now and the vibes are great. So many experts believe that Caitlin and company will be an opponent everyone wants to avoid. The incredible turnaround is fascinating. So we will analyze how it happened and what Caitlin and her teammates have to do in order to continue winning. To fully understand the magnitude of this feat, we need to consider the Fever's recent history and its 8-year-long postseason absence. The team last appeared in playoffs in 2016 when Caitlin Clark was just starting high school, and it's been so bad the past couple of years that it was awarded 2 #1 draft picks in a row. While this infusion of talent certainly helped, early in the season, the team's evaluation around the league was quite low. Doubts only got louder after the team started slowly, and Caitlin's game was marred by too many turnovers. But everything came together for this young team after the Olympic break. Caitlin Clark suddenly started looking like a veteran leader as she found out how to put her talented teammates in perfect positions to score and learned how to manipulate defenses that were too determined to take the ball out of her hands. It appears that additional rest that Caitlin and other players got during the break may have been essential. It may have been fortuitous that Clark was infamously left off the U.S. team, as she could finally take a break after months of non-stop competition and get fresh legs for the stretch run. This hiatus from play also gave the coaches a chance to fix some of the schematic issues that were causing heartbreaking losses back in May and June. Here is how Caitlin describes this part of her summer and explains what made the turnaround possible.
I thought it was a good period for us to work on a lot of things that we needed to work on, but also things that the coaching staff identified was areas that we were weak in the first 26 games and that we have to improve in, especially defensively, going forward if we want to have a chance to win a lot of games.
A lot was written about the Fever's offensive renaissance, which is understandable considering how pretty their play can be when Caitlin is in the zone. Still, the main thing may have been tightening up some of the defensive issues that sabotaged the team's success at the start of the season. Caitlin Clark may never be seen as an elite defender, but she is playing with passion on that end and is very good at getting steals and igniting fast breaks after them. During the recent run of success, the Fever has been able to capitalize on its faster play, and that wouldn't be possible if they had to take the ball out of the basket after every opponent possession. It's also very good for team chemistry when the biggest star takes defensive duties seriously. Consistency in big moments is another issue that many young teams tend to struggle with, and we have seen Indiana drop a few winnable games due to costly errors in the final minutes. In the second part of the season, the Fever started showing more resilience when the game was close during the fourth quarter, and their record promptly improved. Second-year center Aaliyah Boston is one of the players who are showing the most growth in this regard, and she is fully aware of that. Here is what she had to say after a hard-fought victory that went all the way to the final whistle.
Yeah, I think, in the course of the season, it's about making sure that we're able to close out games. There were some games that we lost at the beginning of the season because our fourth quarter wasn't great, and so even going into this fourth quarter, we just emphasized that, listen, this is the fourth quarter, 10 more minutes, we have to give it all our best. We knew that they weren't just going to lay down and let us take the game, and so just making sure that if they score, then we have to score and they get a stop, and that's really our mindset, especially in that fourth quarter.
It would be naive to think that Boston and the rest of the team would be able to improve their clutch play so much without the leadership of Caitlin Clark. The young point guard has the ball in her hands when it truly matters, and she has been exceptionally calm whenever things got tough. Such an attitude is contagious, and it's no wonder that Aaliyah Boston is learning how to win under the mentorship of a player who demonstrated a winning mentality throughout her career. This quote illustrates that the players understand they have to face some adversity and that nobody will just give them the victory, which is the first step towards building that uncompromising mindset that leads to consistent success. Pretty much everyone agrees that the change is real and that this version of the Indiana Fever truly belongs in the playoffs. The head coach of the team, Christy Sides, has been the architect of the turnaround, and she watched from up close how the team evolved over the course of the season. According to her, there was no big secret behind the transformation, and the key was simply to help the girls continue to believe in themselves, even while the losses piled up. This explanation from Sides is very illustrative of the team's thinking and its plans going forward.
Yeah, we don't plan on changing anything. It is still, pedal to the metal, and we just want to make sure that we're doing the things that got us here. Just what I kind of told the players this morning in video, if we would have listened to everybody else and only talk about results, right? Being 1-8, we wouldn't have been here if it was something that was important to us. But all we kept talking about was the things that were important, which was effort, just our energy, the togetherness, the toughness, and then the resiliency.
It may be true that every basketball coach wants the players to focus on the process rather than the results, but not every young team is capable of following through with that request. Coach Sides will certainly continue to talk about teamwork and energy, but she knows that the winning streak has only been possible because her best players started playing smarter and more efficient basketball. From everything we've seen so far, Caitlin Clark gets along great with her coach, and their relationship is only improving as the team is finding success. It seems the coach and the floor general have established mutual trust and are working in unison to get the rest of the team to perform better, and whenever this is the case, the results are sure to follow. The biggest beneficiary of this setup, and perhaps the public face of the Fever's newfound firepower, is guard Kelsey Mitchell, who has been on fire with long-distance shooting lately and has helped immensely to clinch a playoff spot. Mitchell fits very well next to Clark, and the dynamic duo is torching defenses with versatile attack and deadly outside shooting. More importantly, at 29 years old, she is the veteran presence that Fever's young stars desperately need on the floor, and her contributions in this role will become even more important in the playoffs. Mitchell, who never appeared in the playoffs before, is very even-keeled regarding the prospects of finishing the season among the league's elite.
In our locker room, even when coach has talked about it, we focus from game to game, but we're not crazy. We know playoffs is like a big deal for all of us, and I think we try to stay focused on what's right, and I think the main thing is game by game, but I think as we get down the stretch of these games, our experience and what we've been through early is helping and showing how we can be effective now.
This is the maturity that Fever will need if they want to withstand the challenge of facing the same team over and over in the playoffs. Thinking too far ahead can be very dangerous, and while Mitchell admits the entire team is excited, she never loses sight of the next task at hand. By staying focused on the next game, the Fever players can give their maximum and do all the little things that lead to winning. Considering they were able to string together 2 months of elite play and secure a playoff spot with a few weeks remaining, they seem to have learned the lesson from the soul-crushing early season defeats. Cool heads like Mitchell and Coach Sides still have a huge role to play, helping Caitlin Clark to keep her composure emotionally charged situations and give her best when the team needs it. We need to stop for a moment and admire the feat that Indiana rookie point guard has achieved. She came to a WNBA franchise that struggled to get off the bottom of the league for years and instantly transformed it into a legitimate playoff contender. She posted historic numbers and smashed records every step of the way, eventually working her way into the MVP conversation. It's very rare for rookies to be that impactful, no matter the level of their talent. Even legends like LeBron James or Nikola Jokic didn't qualify for a playoff spot as rookies and had to take their lumps before finding that elusive winning formula. It took Caitlin just a couple of months to crack the code in the WNBA and become one of the finest and most feared players in the entire league. Clark is starting to understand what her shooting ability allows her to do on the floor. The opponents are terrified of her and make entire defensive game plans just to prevent her from having a big scoring game. Like all the best players, Caitlin has smart counters for every defensive strategy, and she doesn't mind letting her teammates do the damage when it makes sense from a tactical standpoint. Former Detroit Pistons point guard Isaiah Thomas sees Fever's success as a direct consequence of improved play from Caitlin, and he explains the impossible quandary that defenses face when guarding her.
And what we're seeing now is you're seeing the complete offensive player come into play, because she came in and everyone was saying, okay, we got to take away the three. And then they found out, okay, she's unselfish. Every time we put 2 on the ball, she passes behind the trap, and now we got 4 against 3. And they got Mitchell swatted up in the corner, and she's knocking down the 3.
Thomas saw a lot of double teams back in his day, and he understands that sharing the ball is the best way to beat aggressive coverage. If 2 players are covering Clark, that automatically means someone is going to be free elsewhere on the court, and the ball just needs to find the way to the open woman. When Mitchell is the one left open, Fever is looking downright scary, and this is just a hint of what the team is capable of when its offense functions as intended. This advanced basketball analysis from Thomas also shows why this form of Fever basketball is sustainable over the long term, but it's unclear how well it would work in a playoff series when the opponent has more time to prepare new tricks. While basketball is a team game, the impact of stars can't be overstated. Adjustments that Fever made on both ends of the floor are very important, but they wouldn't really work unless the team's best player really bought into the program. Caitlin Clark is the center of gravity on the court, and her presence is what allows the system to work, and anyone who knows basketball X's and O's can see that. Cynthia Cooper is a two-time NCAA champion and four-time WNBA champion, so she knows a thing or two about winning, and she is absolutely ecstatic about the way Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and the rest of the team look right now.
Let me tell y'all something. I just came from the Dallas Fever game, and Enrique is the truth, okay? Caitlin Clark, 28-12, winning on the road with Kelsey Mitchell, the absolute truth. I'm sitting there like, oh my God. But she's so crafty. This is what people don't know about Caitlin. She's not just a three-point shooter. She's a great passer.
Again and again, those who know the most about basketball are impressed with how willing passer Caitlin is at such a young age. She may be scoring at a historical pace for a rookie, but she never tries to put up empty numbers. It didn't take her long to figure out that the very threat of her scoring is changing how the game flows, and she is becoming better at leveraging this threat to create easy baskets. Cynthia Cooper was a master point guard in her day, so her words of support mean that Caitlin is now accepted as a basketball savant by those who set the golden standard she is now trying to reach. The rising level of excitement about the Fever is not limited to former players and is gradually becoming the main talking point for analysts and media talking heads as well. It's hard to ignore a team that's playing a beautiful style of basketball and winning at the same time, especially if it features one of the best players in the league. Here is how CBS Sports analyst Mackenzie Brooks described the evolution of Fever's offense around Caitlin's otherworldly passing skills.
The Fever rock right now. Simply put, they're playing their best basketball ever. You can tell Caitlin Clark was rested from that Olympic break. Now you have Kelsey Mitchell as well. I think the old strategy used to be just clamp down on Caitlin Clark and the rest will take care of itself. Now Caitlin Clark has found ways to find her teammates.
Pressuring the other team's best player isn't exactly the most innovative scheme in the world, but the opposing coaches initially hoped that Caitlin might struggle dealing with pressure and physicality. She clearly appears to have solved this puzzle by giving the ball up early and then relocating on the court to get it back in a good shooting position. Clark is becoming comfortable in this game of cat and mouse, and her confidence is showing when it matters the most. Still, there is one last thing left for her to prove, that she can do the same against a very good team in the playoffs, without having the cushion of home court advantage. With the Fever now guaranteed a playoff spot, the speculation is moving towards a possible matchup and the chances that Indiana wins a series or two. You could argue that a team with Caitlin Clark always has a chance to steal a couple of unexpected wins, but there are some legitimate questions about the ability of a young team to adjust to a different brand of basketball where every possession matters. Veteran ESPN analyst Rebecca Lobo had some interesting thoughts on this topic.
And I think they can win a first-round matchup depending on who they play. Right now, they're seeded to play the Connecticut Sun, and this is a team, and the last time that these two teams matched up, Indiana did win that game. But the big concern for Indiana, of course, and you heard Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston joking about it on the podium, is they don't have any playoff experience. Today, their starting lineup has a combined 0 games of playoff experience. Their entire roster has only 9 games of playoff experience. So that's the question.
It's probably true that Connecticut would be a more manageable foe than Minnesota Lynx or Las Vegas Aces, as the Fever lost their most recent game against either of these two possible opponents. It would also be a big relief for Caitlin to avoid a direct showdown with the likely MVP Wilson, who is leading the Aces along with Kelsey Plum and all the media noise that would come with it. Due to their inexperience, the last thing Fever players need is to be starstruck by the presence of established WNBA headliners or caught up in personal rivalries. Caitlin Clark and the rest of her team need a confidence boost, so they will have to battle it out in the first round with whoever the opponent happens to be. If you ask Caitlin, it doesn't really matter who is on the other side of the court. She believes the approach doesn't change much based on the opponent and sounds very optimistic going into her first offseason. Then again, Caitlin is famous for her work ethic and relentless dedication to practice, so we shouldn't be too surprised that she is focusing more on her own preparation than on who she will face. In her own words, Here is how she feels about picking and choosing the first-round opponent.
I don't have a preference, no. I think that would be kind of crazy. I just think, wherever we go, we go. You prep the same exact way as you would prep for anybody else. Same way you've prepped all season long. Obviously, there's a little more on the line, but, it's basically going to be new for every single person in our franchise.
It's hard to tell whether this is just Clark's poker face or she truly doesn't think about the other team at all. It's human to think about different scenarios and hope for outcomes that suit you. But in basketball, you need to be careful what you wish for as a team. Perceived as inferior can always put up an inspired performance. We need to remember that Indiana isn't seen as a top championship contender going into the playoffs and that the team has already exceeded expectations, so whatever else they accomplish is just a bonus. Still, fans who faithfully rooted for Fever all year would love for Caitlin to crown her incredible season by advancing at least one round. In order to do that, she will need even more help from her teammates. Like we mentioned before, all the principal players on the roster are inexperienced when it comes to postseason basketball, and at least some of them will have to grow up quickly and play exceptionally well from the first minute. Popular TV anchor Elle Duncan thinks there is one player in particular who is central to the Fever's hopes of a deep playoff run.
As important as Kelsey Mitchell has been, as important as Lexi Hull finding a bit of a stroke to go along with her defense, as important as Nalissa Smith coming off the bench has been, they need Aaliyah Boston. That is the difference between maybe winning a first-round series and really making some noise.
You can't argue against the logic that the Fever's second most talented player must show up for the team to have any real chance. We already know that Caitlin will be Caitlin, as she is no stranger to big crowds and heated moments. Indiana's other young star had some brilliant moments this year, but she also had games where she was too passive and disengaged. That can't happen on the biggest stage, or the Fever might have to rethink whether the pairing of Boston and Clark can work long-term. Playing next to Clark brings additional responsibility, and as a former #1 draft pick, Aaliyah Boston must prove that she can be that perfect complement for the inside-out punch. As you can see, there are countless storylines to follow as the Indiana Fever prepare for their first taste of playoff intensity. Caitlin Clark fans should be happy they will get to see a couple more games from their hero, no matter the results. This is likely the last year when Clark making playoffs is newsworthy, as she looks set for a sustained run of success over the next decade. This year, we are just getting a preview of what's to come, and that's enough to make 2024 WNBA playoffs must-watch television.